What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Midwest Outdoors podcast. Here we are, episode numero dos, and I'm your host, Jim O'Neill. First of all, I want to thank everyone who joined us on episode 1 of the relaunch of this podcast. It was tons of fun for me to do, and I believe we found something to give you guys. I think this show, we're going to keep working on it. We're going to keep condensing it and make sure you guys don't have to hear anything that's not pertinent. Make sure you guys are getting all the information that you need to, again, live by the Midwest Outdoors motto. And we want to just help you guys enjoy the outdoors and learn more about the outdoors, know what to use, how to use it, when to use it, where to use it, all that. So we'll start again at the top with what's going on this week in the outdoor industry. So we'll start at the national level. Guys, Duck Commander, okay? All those, you remember everyone, those duck hunters that came into your neighborhood, they came into your living room when Duck Commander, Duck Dynasty, the show, went huge? Well, it's their 50th year anniversary. And although we don't work with them, we don't manufacture any part of any of their content, I think it's so important to talk about this because they've been around for 50 years, and again, they were just making duck calls and hunting equipment and such. But then the Robinson family made it huge. It made living in the outdoors normal, Individuals that lived in big cities across the U.S. and in the world started watching duck hunting. Now, I know what you have to say, all the real hunters out there. It's not necessarily all about hunting, right? It's a lot of drama, and it has some cutesy stuff in it and all that. But it brought fishing segments and it brought hunting segments to national TV. And of course, there's tons of things on TV that anyone can watch, but this show captivated, and it made so many different people that normally wouldn't ever watch something about fishing or hunting start enjoying that. And I think that's huge for our scope. It's huge for the outdoor industry, and it brings more people to shows like this. So shout out to Willie and the whole entire family, Uncle Si. Great family, great content, great outdoorsmen. Now, they are commemorating their 50th anniversary by actually coming out with a movie. So it's called The Blind, and it's a hunting blind, right? The Blind. And they go throughout the life of Willie and Kay and the father and everyone. And I can't wait to see it. I'm going to see a special premiere of it early. But again, it's bringing outdoor industry, hunting and fishing, to not only now the televisions, but now into the movie theaters. So I think that's awesome, and I recommend you guys go and see it. Other things going on, there's this week, a new state record was beat. Now, normally we won't cover this, but because we're a little light on the records, right, I wanted to bring this up. Maryland, they got a new sheephead record coming in at 16.6 pounds. So it broke the record by over a pound. And that was caught September 17th, so just a couple weeks ago, and just officially confirmed as a record. Now, I do have to classify. I know most things we talk about here is freshwater, and in the Midwest, we're all used to catching drum or sheephead. But I am talking about the saltwater sheephead, so different than our guys. But still super cool fish. And if you guys have never seen the teeth on a sheephead, a saltwater sheephead fish, go do a favor right now. After you got done listening to this, go Google sheephead, and specifically sheephead mouth or teeth, and you guys will laugh/be horrified, because the sheephead has a mouth unlike anything else, and that's all I'm going to say about it. A little closer to the Midwest, we have Piedmont Lake over in Ohio. All right, Piedmont Lake was just stocked with 2,370 muskie. So a lot of fish are going into there, a lot of muskie. If you muskie hunters, obviously those fish are not going to be something that you want to catch right away. They're still going to be little guys, but that's a lot of muskie. You know, I'm not super familiar with the lake. I'm not sure how big that is and such, but that's something that will in a few years turn the catch rate, and you'll start seeing muskie. Speaking of stock and muskie, they have reintroduced stocking muskie to Delavan Lake in Wisconsin, over by Lake Geneva, not too far north of the border of Chicago. And again, Geneva, Delavan, there are amazing fisheries. There's already muskie in Geneva, but both lakes have giant largemouth and smallmouth, big pike, big walleye. So now to have more of a population of muskie coming to Lake Delavan, that's something that intrigues me, being less than a 2-hour ride from Chicago for sure. Tonight is the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame inductions, and there are 3 different individuals being introduced tonight. Bruce Holt, congrats Bruce. He's getting inducted for his work in the industry as well as what he did to develop and spread G. Loomis rods. So, you know, pretty big in the industry, physically working, and maybe not so much on the TV or fishing tournament side, but big in the fishing industry and bass fishing industry. Then we have Glenn Andrews, who before tournament fishing was even a big thing, he was kicking butt and taking names. And he's actually kind of given the respect of maybe developing or making it famous, and that's the Texas rig. He utilizes the Texas rig to catch bass year round and flip and pitch and do things that hadn't been done in bass fishing yet before, and that led to his success. And when he was in his prime and shortly after his career, he was known as the greatest bass fisherman of all time. So obviously that's a name that might not be familiar with my younger listeners and viewers, but he made bass fishing great. And if you guys ever threw a Texas rig, which I've thrown tons, it's one of my absolute favorite baits and techniques, you guys can thank Mr. Andrews for that. And lastly, and this is who I was getting to a little bit, is our guy, Mike Iaconelli. And between Kevin Van Dam and Mike, they made me love bass fishing. I started with the salmon fishing, and we're going to get into that today, but they made bass fishing so captivating. Now, Mike, and he knows this, I don't think I'm busting anything here, maybe wasn't as dominant at times as Kevin and some other fishermen, but he was always in the top. He was always a competitor. He's won an Angler of the Year. He's won Opens. He's won a kayak tournament. He's won at the amateur level, at the semi-pro level, and he's won the big ones. He's won a classic. He's won an Angler of the Year, and you're the best fisherman in the world if you do those things. So he's getting what he deserves. And put all that aside, all the accolades aside, all the big fish aside, you can get into his TV shows then. He's had multiple TV shows that have been regional and national shows. I really, really loved them. And there might be a chance we'll see one of those shows resurface in the future. But the culture change that he brought to fishing, the bad boy mentality a little bit, and he embraced it in a way where he didn't go all out on the bad boy route. He just did what he loved. He screamed, he shouted, he sang, he danced, he broke dance. That's right, guys. If you haven't ever seen this, again, another thing to Google once you're done with the show is Mike Iaconelli break dancing on the front of a boat. But he brought passion and excitement to bass fishing that wasn't really seen before. And someone like me who's very enthusiastic, very emotional, and wears those emotions on the sleeve, he made me like bass fishing even more, because I said, wow, I can be who I want and do what I want while fishing too, play some music, dance, not be that quiet old man style that I felt like a lot of people, especially at my youthful age, felt like fishing was about. No, it was fun now. It was exciting. Mike, thank you so much for everything you've done for not only me, but the whole entire fishing community, bass fishing and everything. You've changed how it is. Congrats. You deserve this. Enjoy your night. Enjoy the Hall of Fame induction. And we'll talk to you later down the line and talk about what this has all meant to you, how you've hit every different level of this industry. So congrats. Earlier this year, we had yet another world record for the king salmon. If you guys aren't familiar or aware of what's going on down in Patagonia, down in Argentina, it's otherworldly. Unfortunately, we're not seeing those giant salmon anymore out of Alaska. And if we are, it's very far in between. Like anything, the fish have been a little bit overfished. The water's rising a little bit in the ocean. Food sources are getting broken up a little bit, and it's caused those giant fish to decline, right? So besides the 100-something pounder, 106-pound king salmon that's caught off the British Columbia coast a few years ago, Argentina's where giant king salmon have been caught. So although I recommend you staying tuned to this show and hearing how you can catch really big king salmon right here in our backyard in the Midwest, if you want to go on the trip of a lifetime, Argentina has the biggest king salmon left these days. And James Schmidt caught and registered 112 centimeter king salmon. And although that is a far off size from what that 100-plus pounder weighed, that is the IGFA record in length, 112 centimeters. And that is about 44 and a half inches, guys. And this is a huge king salmon. And it's gorgeous. I wish they looked like this in the Midwest. But that is our perfect transition, because we are going to be talking about salmon in this episode, guys. We're going to be talking about trout, and we're going to be talking about the Great Lakes. So I just wanted to prep you guys on that and leave that last for the news there, because this is going to be a very salmon-y episode. Now, guys, we're going to transition from the news and head to the tournament wrap-up. So this weekend coming up is the College Bassmaster bracket. So these guys go head-to-head like a March Madness bracket, and they compete 1v1, and each day they eliminate until there is truly 1v1 in the championship. And the winner of that is going to go on and fish the Bassmaster Classic. I won't say it's the easiest route, because these guys have to fish against hundreds of competitors to win the national championship to get into the bracket, or they have to be a top finisher in the national championship and then compete against each other and fish against the best ones and win day after day. So there's nothing easy about it. But that being said, there is someone that's going to make it even harder on everyone that's competing. Tucker Smith of Auburn, Alabama, has now won multiple national titles. He has won the largest amateur pot of all time, winning $500,000 and splitting it with his partner. And he's just winning club tournaments and opens in Alabama all the time. And him and his partner, Hayden, they are two of the finalists in this bracket. And although we're not partial to anyone, and I can't wait to see who wins it, it is going to be unbelievably hard to beat Hayden or Tucker, especially Tucker. So watch that tournament this weekend. That is out in Milford Lake in Kansas. So one of our Midwestern states. So that should be an interesting tournament, and it's cool to see a different lake that doesn't get a whole lot of attention. It's cool to see them on there. This weekend also was a tournament on Lake of the Ozarks, our southern west corner of the Midwest. And Kyle Patrick, young gun, caught 53 pounds and 11 ounces on a football head jig and a drop shot worm. And he was looking in those transitional places where those fish were coming up off their summer spots, out of the rivers, off the ledges, to those staging points, those river swings and those points. And he was fishing isolated brush piles that he found with those two baits and caught some good ones and got those points up and won a big check, and now gets to go fish in the Classic. So that's really cool. So we talked about the Lake of the Ozarks, and all those pros are competing for spots on the Elite Series. The top 10 of all the Opens, the Bassmaster Opens, get to next year fish the Elite Series. So there's only one tournament left. Lake of the Ozarks was the second to last one. So in a couple weeks here, everyone's going to be competing down in Florida for that last Open, and then we'll find out who the new faces are on the Elite Series next year. So I look forward to that. We got a couple guys in the top 10 that are friends of the show, but anything can change, so I won't jinx anyone. But guys, fish hard. To everyone I know down there in the last event, congrats on a great season. Finish strong, and can't wait to see who makes that cut. So in the tournament wrap-up, guys, we talked about the Lake of the Ozarks event, and we talked about the college bracket. I'm going to tie those together and tell you how there's another tournament that's happening this upcoming weekend, and that's the Toyota Series, the semi-pro MLF circuit. And my buddy Trevor McKinney, who, if you haven't heard the name, has dominated Southern Illinois, dominated the college circuit when he was collegiate, won that bracket we were talking about, and got to fish the Bassmaster Classic, is winning trophies on the Open Tour. He's fishing that Toyota Series this weekend, and he just got done fishing the Bassmaster event. So Mr. Trevor McKinney himself is going to join us right after this commercial break.
Midwest Outdoors Magazine helps you enjoy the outdoors, giving you the best information on where to go, what to use, and how to use it. With fishing maps marked by the pros, nature notes, in-depth interviews, and much, much more. Your subscription gets you 10 big issues of the best in fishing, hunting, and the great outdoors. Plus, Midwest Outdoors Digital Edition gives you dozens of extra articles. Sign up now at mwomag.com. That's mwomag.com.
What's going on, guys? And we are back from the commercial break, and now it is time to enjoy the fishing reports this week. And first, we are joined in the southwest corner of the Midwest by none only than Illinois' favorite fisherman, Trevor McKinney. Trevor, what's going on?
Oh, not a lot. Just getting myself ready. Fishing Lake of the Ozarks. Have been for the last week or so, and we've got a Toyota Series starting tomorrow morning, so I'm getting some stuff rigged up for the Toyota Series.
And you just finished an Open, I know. How'd you do in that?
I ended up 43rd in the Open. Actually missed a check because of a dead fish. Sometimes you just can't keep them alive, and have one die and cost me a check. So I'm looking to go catch them tomorrow.
That's why fish safety and fish handling and conservation is all super important, guys. Not only to continue our fishing that we have for future generations, but also to make sure that money stays in your pocket. So I'm sorry to hear that, Trev. But hey, you've been down on Lake of the Ozarks for over a week now, and you caught them pretty good, at least on day 2. So how have you been catching them bass? What's going on down there on Lake of the Ozarks?
Yeah, this time of the year is always tough. August, September, October, 3 of the toughest months of the year, I feel like. And there's just fish doing a little bit of everything. You can catch fish in 30 foot of water. I actually caught a bass yesterday in 35 foot, largemouth. So you can catch them from 35 foot to 3 inches of water right now. And it just makes it tough this time of the year when the fish are just doing a little bit of everything. And they haven't quite made their fall patterns yet here on Lake of the Ozarks. In 2 or 3 more weeks, we're going to get some colder nights. It's going to really push those fish up shallow. And there's some up shallow right now, but they're just not really pushed up shallow like they should be. So I've been catching most of my fish in 15 to 20 foot of water, throwing things like a drop shot or Apollo DT20, stuff like that, just to target those little bit deeper fish that are chasing bait right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, we actually talked about the Open real quick at the start of the show. It seems like drop shot, a jig, and a swim bait kind of seems like a lot of people that did well, those were the baits they were throwing.
Yeah, that's the thing about Lake of the Ozarks. The lake is so big. You're talking about 75 miles of shoreline. You can run up the river. You can go fish the dam. You can fish clear water, dirty water. So Lake of the Ozarks is one of those lakes that you can just fish your strengths. If you want to run up the river and fish inches of water, go do that. If you want to go up to the dam and fish 20 foot of water and cleaner water, you can do that. For me, I've been fishing the mid-lake area of the lake. You kind of have the best of both worlds. You can fish up shallow. There's a lot of fish up shallow. You can fish out deep. And I've been targeting both, but primarily I've been fishing those 15 to 20 foot bass right now.
you told me before this meeting started that you've also had some fun at night, maybe not catching bass. What have you been doing over there?
Yeah, that's the cool thing about fishing. You learn to meet people everywhere you go, and as much as I travel, I've met a lot of people. So I'm staying with a buddy here on Lake of the Ozarks, and he's actually got a couple of green lights on his dock. And I sent you a picture earlier. The fish at night are just incredible around the dock. Like they just come up, bass will be chasing bluegill off, the crappie are all over the dock. So I think last night we caught about 14 crappie, and we cleaned them, and that's going to be our dinner for tonight. We're going to throw them in the skillet. So Lake of the Ozarks is full of crappie. I caught one day of practice. I think I caught 12 on a jerk bait, and we did the same thing, cleaned them. So crappie are biting for sure.
Absolutely. And I seen that picture, a lot of bluegill too. So definitely the panfish are starting to move first in this fall transition, and then hopefully those bass will follow soon.
Yeah, for sure. No, like I went and just roamed down the bank this morning, and the bluegill are everywhere. The bluegill are all down the banks, and the bass are eating them, and so are the gizzard shad. So the fish are starting to move shallow. I think we need another week, maybe 2 weeks. Need some cold nights, and once we get through this heat wave that we have right now, that's approaching, coming into the weekend, then I think the fish are going to move right to the bank.
Well, Trevor, I thank you for taking a minute out of your busy schedule and joining us. I can't wait to sit down and talk to you about. There's a college classic bracket going on this week, so I'd love to chat with you about that, and hopefully we'll get the winner on here for the next show. So everyone, that's Trevor McKinney. Trevor, if anyone wants to check out your content or check out what you're doing or book a trip with you, how do they find you?
Yeah, go follow me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Pretty much Trevor McKinney Fishing on all platforms, and follow me on there. I try to keep everything posted throughout my tournament series. I fished all 9 Bassmaster Open. I fished the Toyota series. I'm constantly fishing. So go give me a like and a follow.
All right, guys. That is Southern Illinois' own Trevor McKinney and my friend who always whoops me when we're out fishing. Thanks for joining us, Trevor. All right, everyone. We are joined by a legend in the sport. And today is his birthday, and he decided to join me. I don't know why, but Mark Menendez, how are you, Mark?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here with you.
Well, happy birthday, man.
Thank you. I'm 102 years old now, old as dirt, and the aches and pains hurt more than they did yesterday.
So do you call up like Larry Nixon and Jimmy Houston, Bill Dance? Are you in the old guy club now? You get to hang out?
Jim, I don't know when it happened. I've been fishing bass now for 34 years, and I started at 26 years old. I can remember Jimmy Houston and, Brower, and of course, Clunn's still fishing with us. And those were the old guys way back then. And then all of a sudden, this beard got white and this hair turned good and gray. And everybody's a kid except for about 6 of us. So, yeah, I guess I'm the old guy now.
The scope of tournament fishing is definitely changing with the age a little bit. That's for sure. So, Mark, we're here. Obviously, we can talk about your career and fishing forever, and hopefully we'll get you on for a segment in the future. But we are talking fishing reports now. So for anyone that doesn't know, you are down on the Kentucky Lake area, correct?
I sure am. Born and raised here, and millions of miles of water and big lakes, good rivers. We've got some smaller lakes around the area that are awfully good fishing. So I've been very fortunate to be around some good fishing my entire life.
We talked a little bit about Kentucky Lake last episode, so if you want to brief on that, you can. But what else is going on in your area? Tell everyone where they should go, what they should use.
Well, doggone it, Jim, we're still on a rebound. We're on a rebound from the Asian carp issue. As you know, I work very closely with Yamaha Right Waters and been to Capitol Hill and talked to about 60% of our lawmakers to this point, trying to get funding, trying to get monies to fight that Asian carp problem. And we did that about 3-4 years ago, and it's been an ongoing process. And Jim, I'm pleased to report, I'm thrilled to report to you that Kentucky and Barkley Lakes are on the rebound. They're doing very well. This summer, it has taken a 4-pound average to win most bass tournaments, which is pretty respectable anywhere in the world. I did have a 25-pound day, 5 fish that weighed 25 in mid-June. That was shocking and a lot of fun. I had 22 keepers that day. Wow. And 4 different species of black bass. I had largemouth, I had smallmouth, I had a spotted bass, and I had about a 3-pound meanmouth in the boat.
I was wondering what that 4th one was.
So It's really great to see. One of the things that happens with your bodies of water when the carp come in, you see a proliferation of those carp. And a body of water can only carry so many fish. That's called the carrying capacity. And when those carp expand and expand and expand, your native species have nowhere to go but down. So we experienced that. We lost a lot of our bait fish, our gizzard shad and threadfin shad. And then all of a sudden, through management processes, by getting these fish, these extra carp out of the system through commercial fishermen, a couple of almost like a blight came through. We had a couple of fish kills that killed these Asian carp. A bacteria built up, a natural bacteria killed a lot of fish. So we had room in the lake. And lo and behold, those bait fish started coming back. Lo and behold, I started seeing white bass again. Hey, I caught some rockfish this summer. And one of the most amazing comebacks are the sauger. Have not seen sauger in years. I'm seeing 2 to 3 pound sauger regularly out there cranking deep ledges right now. So our bass population has changed a little bit.
Yep.
We have more smallmouth than what we used to have.
That's awesome to hear. And I can't wait to hear about one more. Maybe we could touch on one more spot, but real quick on them bass, them spotted bass. Now, my favorite fish is probably the Alabama spot
Absolutely.
where I found the Kentucky spot to be a little bit of an issue. And so is the DNR, I've heard, in different spots, and not necessarily in Kentucky Lake, but certain bodies of water.
Well, they are. They're aggressive little fish, and they're aggressive little spawners, and they will actually really try to breed with a largemouth and or a smallmouth if they possibly can. And when you get large numbers of them, Jim, you get you get some stunning in some lakes. The small Kentucky bass will stunt. In our lake, we've never had a problem with that because there was a balance between the 3 species of fish. And when I was growing up, it was not uncommon to catch a 4.5 to 5 3/4 to 6 pound spotted bass here.
Wow.
In fact, most of the tournament catches were made up primarily of spotted bass back in the early 80s. Throw a couple of 4 pound largemouth on there and you had a 20 pound bag and it was unheard of. So it's good to see them back. We don't have any problems here with them on the Tennessee River. They find their own little niches, they get in their own little areas, and they generally stay there. So I look forward to seeing them to come back. They never really were a huge population of fish, but boy, they were good ones to catch. And if those Alabama spotted bass got bigger, Jim, they would eat jet skis. There's no doubt about it. That's the most aggressive bass. So, and right now, topwater is a really good thing to be utilizing.
No doubt. I love topwater, especially in that transitional change. You get to them points and schooling fish and in the back of coves, and I love it. You talk about how those bass were getting bigger. I was just looking up the results of the Big Bass Bash. The collegiates, the college kids were just there this week, and there was quite a few big 5, 6 pound bass caught, of all different species.
There certainly were, and my Murray State racers took a lot of the money in that. I'm really proud of my boys. I've been working with those boys some and girls. There's some girls on the team too. Don't want to leave them out. Been working with them quite a bit. Was down there last week and met with the club and spoke to the club. So yeah, I'm glad to see those big fish. Typically here on Kentucky and Barkley Lakes, the fall is when we had thousands and thousands of fish. Fall here has always been a tough time. This transition, this September to October, you could steal a tournament with 12, 13, 14 pounds. There was a 2-day tournament here this weekend as well. 32 pounds won that. That's pretty good catching, even though our fish numbers are lower than what they used to be. So it's kind of more of a hunt and peck and gather one fish here and one fish there than finding big schools of fish right now. It's the way it's been for the last 3 or 4 years. But now I'm starting to see those fish run together in wolf packs, and you get multiple bites on the same place.
So just to wrap that all into one thing, because I know we got a little bit off track there. If someone's going to Kentucky or Barkley, they're fishing pretty similar right now. You look for the transition points and where those fish can start moving a little bit back. We need a little more cold water, probably still a little cold weather still.
Well, the cold water really bunches the fish up, and the Corps of Engineers has really sucked the water down hard on the two lakes. We're down to about 355, which in my opinion is a little bit lower than what we normally are, maybe a foot lower. So they've really pulled that down towards the 354 line, which is the static winter pool. So right now, I don't think you'd find as much cover in the backs of the bays. You would look for that last little bit of verticality in the backs of the bays. And if you found a boat dock that had 2 or 3 feet of water, or a brush pile, or a laydown, you could find a few largemouth bass. Right now, it's been more about bar hopping, Jim. From one bar in the mouth of a creek to the other, those fish have been pulled out because of that falling water. And right now, I mean, it's a 3 bait system for me. It's either a top water, a walking bait like a sexy dog, B, burning a spinner bait like a Strike King burner, or C, I love to throw a donkey rig this time of year, and that's 2 jerk baits like caffeine shads rigged on a line, one sliding up and down the line, rigged together there, and you've got 2 baits that are moving like this in simultaneous motion, and it creates a lot of commotion, and those fish can't stand it this time of the year. Got to be around the shad. Go find the shad, you're going to find the bass.
And to anyone that is a little confused there, we're talking about soft plastic jerk baits,
Yes.
your fluke style, caffeine shad style bait, not a hard body. Well, Mark, it was great talking to you. We'll have to talk more in the future, especially about Murray State, because I was, until about the day before registration, I was supposed to go there and decided to change up everything. And who knows if that was the right choice, but here we are now, years down the line. So Mark, thanks and happy birthday, man. And hope we'll see you around. We're going to go check out the Hall of Fame speeches now tonight.
That sounds great. Thanks for having me, and I appreciate talking to you, and we'll talk again soon.
Everyone, that's Mark Menendez, a career-long tournament bass fishing pro, and truly, in my opinion, one of the nicest guys you will ever meet. But he's got a brain full of years and years of bass fishing and freshwater fishing, and that's why we love to join these professionals, not only on the water, but on their home bodies water, their areas, and really check in with these Midwestern pros to tell us how to catch more fish, because we can all utilize it. I know I'm over here writing things down, and I'm gonna go out and do it. Well, it is time for the product review. This is the time we get to look at what's new in the fishing industry and what equipment you might need or want for this upcoming season or your next fishing trip. So now I'm going to take a step out of the studio, and you guys can join me outside where we're going to look at a new rod and reel for salmon and fishing this year. So this week I want to talk about a couple of our sponsored products that have some insane capabilities when it comes to salmon and trout fishing. Right here, I have the brand new Encore spinning rod from St. Croix. Now, the Encore series has been around for a while. It's been known for trolling, that $250 to $300 range for a really high-end trolling rod for salmon or trout. But now it's available for casting and spinning, and this is an 8.6 medium heavy. And this is awesome, not only for casting spoons and big jigs off of pier heads and stuff like that, but this is a perfect creek rod. So not only does the 8.6 give you length and power to cast baits when you're out on the big water, especially this big handle, it's good for leverage to really throw out a big bait. But this big rod is also awesome for when you're in the creeks, because you can manipulate the fish. You can maneuver it the way you want. By having that long rod, you can move it around stumps and around laydowns that we're always fighting with in the creeks for these salmon and trout. So that's one of my favorite parts about it. Another thing about it is its tapers really nice. So you could fish skein or a spawn sack on this. You know, the tip is soft and fast. So you can fish bait with it, or you can fish artificial, and it'll load up but have enough backbone. See, there's no play at all in this backbone, so it can handle a big fish. This is a 2-piece rod. Obviously, you could barely tell. It goes together really nice, but it's 2 pieces, so it's perfect for traveling, whether it's in a car or a plane. So this is a great rod that you guys can use anywhere. It retails for $210, so if you guys want a high-end, great salmon and trout rod, this is what I highly recommend. Now you see down here, I do have a reel on it. This is actually the Diawa Revros, and this is a really nice reel. This is a 4000 series size, and that's kind of what you want. We talk about what products we want or what gear we want for salmon and trout fishing, you want at least a 3,000 size reel. I prefer a 4. So this is really nice. It doesn't even seem that big. It's a little bigger than your standard walleye or bass size reel. This has an incredible drag system. It's got a real big handle with a large arm on it. So that's gonna be retrieving a lot of line quickly when you need to make up for when you miss a fish or when you're going to set that hook with slack line. So that's really important on this. But overall, really smooth reel, really nice, around that $100 price range, so it won't break the bank. And this is just a perfect combination for all of that. Now, while I'm out fishing, guys, it's important to stay out of the sun. You know, now that it's fall, we've already gone through the spring and the summer season, and we've been beat on by the sun all year round. And that's where this shirt comes in. So if you guys haven't heard of them yet, Flikr Fishing, okay? This is an awesome product. Let me set my rod down here for a second to show you guys. Because I'm on the water so often, it's so important that I do stay protected, not only to get away from sun poisoning or possibly later down the line melanoma, but just be able to fish strong throughout your day. So you got UV protecting clothing. It has holes in it, so it's very breathable, the whole thing. I've gotten this shirt soaked on Lake Michigan before, and it dries completely in about 15 to 30 minutes, depending on the temperature of the day. So that's super great. But again, that sun protection, guys. We got a hood here that I'm gonna show you. So you got a nice hood, right? It expands over so it protects even some of your face. And then if that's not enough for you guys, we can go full ninja stealth mode. Now you guys don't even know I'm here. All the gear provided for today's product review came from Fishing Connection in Tinley Park, Illinois. If you guys want to check out the shop, it's located on 159th Street. I highly recommend it. If not, check out their website, fishingconnection.biz. That's this week's product review, guys. Join us next week for a whole new lineup of products. Let's bring it back to the Great Lakes area because that is what this show is about. This week, we are going to have a hyper focus on the Great Lakes and the salmon and trout that are so desirable and sought after in the Great Lakes. So before we do that, guys, we're going to take it to a quick commercial break and we will be right back. All right, everyone, welcome back. Thanks for sticking with us. And again, huge shout out to our title sponsor, Fish Daddy. Guys, they got it all from bass to ice fishing. Check out the site, fishdaddyoutdoors.com, and go scoop yourself some stuff, all right? Now, like I said, this show has a main focus of the salmon and trout in the Great Lakes this year. So I want to start talking about how salmon fishing really was what got me. You know, salmon fishing is what made me fall in love with freshwater fishing. Little did I know, the salmon, it was also my gateway drug to learning that in the off season, I do like to cheat on the Midwest a little bit and go down to Florida or Texas or Louisiana and catch some big saltwater fish. Because that scream of the reel that the salmon and trout give is just unlike anything else in freshwater. I know there's a lot of hard fighting fish, you know. There's big catfish, there's big sturgeon, there's pike, there's muskie. To me, nothing fights exactly like the salmon and trout, especially the king salmon. They are something else. But we're gonna talk with some guests today, and we're gonna talk about what kind of gear you guys need, where to go, when to go, and really get you guys geared up and ready to catch these salmon. After all, the season's not halfway over yet, but we're well underway. I have yet to land one this year, which has gotten pretty frustrating. They are not always easy to catch, although we will talk to Louie, one of our guests today, who I've had one of my best fishing days of my life. We were fly fishing a couple of years ago, or last year rather. Last year, me and Louie got together and we were fly fishing the southeast portion of Wisconsin in a little tributary. And I had my best salmon day of my life. Between the two of us, we had over 20 kings and cohos, and we even had a brown on for 1 minute, but we had over 20 kings and cohos all on the fly rod. They were eating top water. In fact, we had 2 bites where the fly is coming down about to hit the water and the fish explodes like a bass or a pike and eats the fly. That doesn't happen often, you guys. You can't rely on that to happen. That's why it is a grind. I have skunked 4 times this year so far. And some other trips I've lost fish, and on other trips I've had buddies catch them. But I've yet to land my great fish. But that's going to change because we are going to be fishing for them super hard. So make sure you guys are looking at our social media. Midwest Outdoors TV on YouTube and Midwest Outdoors USA on Instagram and Facebook. And you'll see a lot of these pictures of the salmon and trout we're going to be catching in Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin over the next month or 2. You guys are going to have quite a few things to feast your eyes on. But before we get into the gear and some of the pro advice, some of that knowledge for you guys, I want to give you just a list of Midwestern areas to start at. So, of course you can troll for salmon and trout, right? Go talk to a guide, go talk to a captain, hire someone. We have a great guest today in Dumper Dan. He has a whole fleet of vessels that can go out and catch fish, troll for salmon and trout. So I highly recommend doing that. Or if you guys want to cast, we have another great guest, Louie Dazzo, and he will teach you guys how to float skein, how to bobber fish, or how to vertically jig artificials to catch these salmon and trout. But if you're going to do it by yourself, you probably want a place to start. So I made a list, right? I made a list of my top 10 harbors and towns, right? So areas to fish in no particular order. I did try to get a little bit of each state that borders a Great Lake in the Midwest. So our different listeners and viewers, you guys can decide what's the closest place to you, or maybe there's a great destination, a great vacation destination on this list that you can go check out. So, my harbors or my ports. I got Duluth, Minnesota, Ashland, Wisconsin, Marquette, Michigan, the greater Door County, Wisconsin area. The further north, I'd say the better. Sheboygan, Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Michigan City, Indiana, the St. Joe's, Michigan, Muskegon in Michigan, and Sandusky, Ohio area. The best way to know if the creek or river or harbor has good fishing for salmon and trout is go to your guys' DNR. Go to your Department of Natural Resources website and check their stocking. Usually you can find where they've been stocked and how many, and all salmon and trout return to where they were either put in as hatchlings or where they were naturally reproduced, where they were hatched out of an egg. So that's why these harbors and that's why these streams and rivers are always such dependable places to go catch them. King salmon and coho, they normally only live about 4 years. That's the life expectancy. So they spend about 3 years living out in the big lake and growing and eating and mastering whatever a salmon does. And then on year 4, they come in to where they originated and they die. You'll hear something like zombie fish or zombie king, zombie salmon. The salmon put in so much effort to get from miles out on the Great Lakes to coming all the way up a river, sometimes 3 to 10 miles upstream. They get beat up, they go over waterfalls, they go through log jams, and then they start eating themselves. They stop physically eating. A lot of times you'll catch salmon and trout off of a reaction bite, not because they're hungry. Now, the trout live for many, many years. I don't want that to be skewed. I'm getting distracted. We got to get back to your guys' list. So let's talk about the rivers again. Now, some of these do overlap with the harbors. Again, a lot of these harbors then bottleneck and turn into a creek or river. But some of these are different, and some you might not associate the name with the port or the harbor or the town with the river, so I want to give you guys these two, and some are different. So, top rivers, again, no particular order. The Milwaukee River in Wisconsin, the Root River in Wisconsin, Salt Creek and Trail Creek, those are two different creeks in northwest Indiana. St. Joe's River, that's going to flow through Michigan and Indiana, but you're going to find most of your salmonoids and your trout, great steelhead fishery in Michigan. You're going to find those near the mouth in St. Joe's. Big Manistee River in Michigan, the Grand River in Michigan. We got the Pere Marquette, which is a huge, awesome river up near Ludington. The Rocky River out in Ohio, a great steelhead fishery. They've actually started seeing some pink salmon run up there too. In Michigan, they get a lot of pink salmon, especially in the St. Mary's River, which is our last of the top 10. We'll run down the species real quick, and then I think I'll bounce it out to these interviews for you guys. So your most prevalent is the king salmon. The stocking numbers are the highest on it. It's the hardest fighting fish, the most probably desired by fishermen, especially in the salmon world, because how big they get and how much meat they provide. Again, guys, you want to be eating these fish when they are silver tint, chrome, nickel, or to copper at the darkest. Once they start looking brown, black, even they'll literally look white when they hit that zombie mode. Don't eat those fish. You don't need it. But always harvest those eggs, because we're going to talk about how valuable those eggs are later in the show. But we got the king salmon. Then we have the coho that normally follows. So the king salmon runs first, then the coho comes. Again, it's a smaller salmon than the king. They still get beautiful. They still get large. We caught giant ones last year. Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Illinois all got inundated with huge coho last year. So I hope the year is like that this year. Normally you can tell the difference because they get nice red on them. But they also get dark brown or black on the top. So it can be deciphered from a coho and a rainbow trout or a steelhead, because they will also have a pinkish red line down the middle, but it's more fine, right? It's a direct line, where the Chinook, the coho salmon will have a large range of burgundies, orange, and red in their body spaced throughout the whole thing. Now, if you're in an area that has them, after the coho, you would see those pink salmon or humpbacks, and you would see Atlantics. But again, those are few and far between in the Great Lakes, especially by me in Lake Michigan, but you'll find more further north. Speaking of further north, some other species that we don't have here on the south end that you can catch now as far south as Milwaukee is they've started stocking brook trout again in Milwaukee, and we actually caught a few in the harbor. They're fingerlings, still a little bigger than fingerlings, but they're small fish. They got to put the feed bag on and grow. But it's cool to see some of those driftless trout, some of those smaller, more beautiful trout introduced to the Great Lakes, because that's the way they're going to get bigger. And that's the way more anglers are going to be able to have a chance to catch those. You guys go up further north and you see that there are more species to catch, more options, right? So you see more of the Atlantics, you see more of the pinks, you have Arctic char, you have splake up in Lake Superior, a brook trout and a lake trout mix. And then, of course, you got the lake trout. They're actually probably the latest ones. Before the lake trout get really active, you do have that push of the brown trout and the steelhead. And those are a winter trout. And they'll stay around the harbors and the creeks, not only through the late fall, but all the way until the early spring. And some stick around till late March, even April. So once those trout come in, those browns and steelhead, you can fish for them all winter long. And those big lakers also, while those steelhead and browns are running into the harbors and creeks, those big lakers will actually get on the breakwalls and will get on the seawalls and canals and lighthouse heads, pier heads, and they'll spawn on those rocks, guys. And that's really fun too. I usually don't start targeting them till around Thanksgiving here on the south end in Chicago. So further north, you could probably, my rule of thumb usually is you can put about a 1 to 2 week earlier notice for every 100 miles you drive north, right? So I always figure Milwaukee's a week or two ahead of us here in Chicago. With their fishing, you go up another 100 miles roughly to Sheboygan. They're a week ahead of that. And then keep going up Door County, so on and so forth. Last thing I wanted to say, guys, about what you need. We don't get into this in the interviews, so I want to let you guys know you have to have not only your fishing license, as always, but you have to have a salmon stamp. And this is, the salmon and trout stamp is different than an inland trout stamp, so don't be confused. If you guys are going to fish landlocked or driftless trout, that is an inland trout stamp, so you need to make sure you have that. But when it comes to the Great Lakes, salmon and trout, you're going to want a trout and salmon stamp. It's not going to have anything about the words inland, or it's going to say a Lake Michigan or Great Lakes salmon stamp, so on and so forth. So you got to get that. Waders, if you're going to fish the creeks, are almost a must, guys, especially to land these behemoths. I highly recommend waders. Gloves, highly recommend neoprene or plastic rubber gloves when dealing with some of these salmon. They are mating, so it's not uncommon to have the eggs out of the female, and the males will have some sperm running out of them. So watch out for that salmon milk on you. It comes fast and furious. This week we are joined by Dumper Dan of Dumper Dan's Charter Guide Services out of Sheboygan, Wisconsin. And once we wrap up with Dan, we are joined with my buddy Louie of Louie's Get Hooked Guide Service. We are joined by Dumper Dan himself of Dumper Dan's Charter Fishing, Condominiums, and Riverfront Store. That's right, guys. He's got it all. If you're in the Sheboygan, Wisconsin area, stop by and check out this man's fishing fleet and everything else he's got. Dan, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
It is my favorite time of year after all, and I figured it'd be the perfect time to get you on the call because we are talking about salmon and trout in the Great Lakes. And, I wanted to get an insight real quick of what's going on with you guys up there in Sheboygan right now, and then talk a little bit about this Great Lakes fishery that we have for these salmonoids that seems to be incredible and getting better every year.
It is actually. Every year continues to get better. We're stocking more fish. The DNR is of Wisconsin, so there's more fish to be caught and be had and harvested by many anglers. And this kind of time of year is kind of unique because it is close to shore fishing. You can, my 6 charter boats troll right out in front of the harbor area. We call it the Gap here in Sheboygan, Port of Sheboygan, fishing 20 to 30, maybe 40 feet of water for these spawning big king salmon, Chinook salmon when they come in fall season. So that being said, private boat anglers, kayaks, shore fishermen, pier fishermen can all cash in on this awesome fishery fall season right now with these big Chinooks coming in for spawning.
Like you said, it's a perfect time for anyone to get after it. Whether you want to spend the money and go on a guide trip and have everything for you, you guys don't have any gear, you don't need it, just get a fishing license and call our buddy Dan here or some of the other great guides around the Midwest on any of your Great Lakes body of water. You said it, the king salmon, the cream of the crop, one of the biggest, hardest fighting fish we get to experience in freshwater. And I think that's the thing there. Not everyone knows it wasn't necessarily a freshwater fish always.
Well, right. And the kings are what everybody, targets. And the Port of Sheboygan is pretty unique. This is my 39th year in business. Next year will be my 40th year. And I've always stayed in Sheboygan for the simple reason that we're centrally located on the lake. So we're right in the middle from north to south. So we get the longest opportunity for a full season of trout and salmon. And in this Port of Sheboygan, we're catching kings in May, June, July, August, and September. So it's not just a fall fishery. It's the fall is a lot of fun because we're close to shore, but throughout the summer, we're offshore and we're fishing 3, 4, 5, 6 miles out for these same fish in June, July, and August. So it's a whole year of king salmon fishing here out of the Port of Sheboygan, along with other species of trout and salmon combined.
I know how it kind of works, but can you tell the viewers at home kind of the life cycle of these king salmon and what they're doing and why you have to go in one moment you can be in your knickers and fish in a creek for them in a foot of water, and then other times you're talking about going miles out and fishing, I would assume hundreds of feet of water, correct?
Or exactly. And these salmon are chasing the alewife, which is the the bait fish of Lake Michigan, and that's what they feed on, and they feed on them heavy, the alewife, and there's a lot of pods of bait fish out there. And, they're kind of temperature prone, the bait fish, so they follow certain temperatures. So, in May, the fish are a little closer to shore, the water's cold. Then when June, July, and August, when the water gets warmer, they go a little bit offshore, they suspend. The salmon chase these alewife and shadling all summer long, in 100 to 300 feet of water suspended. So then we troll tackle through that kind of depths of water throughout the summer. So the salmon are chasing the bait. That's the biggest thing. And the temperature has a lot to do with it, with water temperature. So we got to kind of monitor all of that to stay on these fish. And like you mentioned earlier, with 6 boats, I mean, we're out every day. We're on top of what's going on. There's a lot of boats out chasing these fish. So it's a lot of fun, and you can catch a cooler full of fish at any given day throughout the summer of trout and salmon.
That's funny you mentioned that, because I was just thinking about this the other day, right? I'm an individual that's fished offshore or on my own boat my whole life. And when I look at a guide, sometimes the price seems a little high, right? For me to justify, but then you break it down and you think, I own a boat, so I know what goes into boat storage and boat upkeep, not to mention the oil and gas you guys have to put it in the bigger boats. Everything costs money. But then let's just think about the salmon. If you get a cooler full of salmon, think about like the meat, what that costs. Think about how much you're getting out of that. And I think a lot of people don't think about that.
Well, exactly. And this is a vacation for a lot of people when you go charter fishing. So it is a vacation, but you go home with that meat in the cooler, you put it on the grill, you freeze it, you have it for your families, your neighbors, your friends. And last time I checked, salmon was like $17, $18 a pound in the market. So you're going home with a lot of what we would call tonnage, but a lot of weight and a lot of nice fillets that you can put on the grill, like I said, freeze or give some away or smoke them, what have you. But it's a great fishery. It's fun to get out here. And here at Dumper Dan's, we are the one-stop shop. I mean, we right on the riverfront, we have 10 condominiums here for lodging. We do lodging and fishing packages. We have 6 charter boats. They're all matching 30-footers, the Dumper Dan fleet. And then where I'm sitting right now in my store on the riverfront, you check in here, you can buy apparel, you check in for your reservations, we get you to your condos. So it's a one-stop shop. It's easy to do, and it is very affordable, way cheaper than buying a boat. So definitely look us up, because it's worth doing if you want to try some charter fishing over your own boat.
So let's just talk about the Kings right now. If someone was going out trolling on their own boat, what's something that you would recommend them trying right now?
You want to try and figure out where they're at, first of all, obviously. And, sometimes we have a lot of people that follow us. So obviously, I mean, we're on the water more than anybody on the lake. And so if you see the charter boats or you see where the action's at, you kind of want to be in that area. So that's a given. But then it depends on what time of year of what you want to run for tackle. I mean, like in spring, it's a lot of spoons, a lot of spoon trolling. During the summer, it's a lot of flasher fly combinations. And then in the fall, it's a lot of plug fishing, popular throughout the fall season. So you want to stock spoons, flasher flies, some plugs. You don't need a lot of everything, but a little bit of everything in our arsenal will help, so you can switch over as needed to target these kings. Water temperature prime is usually anywhere from 48 degrees to about 58 degrees is what you want to look at for temperature. Watch your graph, watch your videos, see where the fish are at in the water column, look for bait fish. Look for temperature changes and thermoclines, but the fish are there. They're not too hard to find, really. But get out there, do some trolling. 2.2 to 2.4 mile an hour is a good speed. That'll get you right in the range of where you want to be with the tackle I just mentioned. So, but all trolling here, we troll lead core setups on planer boards. We troll wire line setups on planer boards. We have mag slide divers, mag dipsy divers, regular dipsy and mag divers. We have downriggers. So a lot of different ways to catch these fish. And on any given day, we're running anywhere from 12 to 20 lines at one time, trolling through the water column. So multiple hookups can happen. You can get 2, 3, 4 fish on at one time when you get in a school of them.
I feel like that's one of the biggest advantages to having a, guide boat, a captain like that, because it is a pain to fish with multiple rods and reels. If no one's done it, on a small boat, like I got a 19-footer, you can run about 4 with 2 guys, and anything after that, it gets all chaotic. And even 4 gets nuts if you hook up into a fish.
Oh, exactly. And it can get pretty hectic, and it can create some havoc and a mess too. And you end up getting a tangle. You can snap off some equipment, lose some fish. But what we also do here too is I have a lot of, I mean, I've been to just about every sport travel vacation show in the Midwest, and I've run into a lot of people at my booth that have their own rigs, their own boats, and they come out, they might lodge with me, they might not, most do, but when they do stay here, they usually book a charter, at least one, and we can show them exactly what I just talked about, show them the tackle, we can have them touch the tackle, put it on the rods, look at what we do, and we can explain everything to them. And I'll tell you what, that helps big time, because then they get back on their boat and they use that technology that we gave them, and they go out and they catch more fish on their own boat.
The purpose of a guide is obviously you can have a relationship with them and you can use them forever. But I don't think, and tell me if I'm wrong, I'm not here to speak for you or any other guides, but you're there truly to teach the fishermen, so that although you want them to come back as guests, you hope and you're happy for them to go catch fish on their own after they've learned from you, correct?
Oh, sure, exactly. And I've had people that have been here 7, 8, 9 years straight now that come back every year, and they don't book a charter with us anymore, but they stop in the store, we talk, we have a good time, we show them where the fish are, they lodge with us, but they go fishing on their own, and they're productive, and they've learned a lot through us, and they still ask questions. But you want to start somewhere. It's awful hard to go to any body of water anywhere, no matter if you're targeting salmon, trout, walleye, muskie, what have you, and just get on the fish right away and know exactly what you're doing. Because even somebody like myself going to a different place would be hard to figure out, especially if you only got 2 or 3 days to do it. If you take a few days of vacation, you got to get back to work. You want to get on top of them fish right away and know where they're at and try and catch them.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guides out there, guys, but be careful with who you select. Some people just put the name on there, because that is the beautiful opportunity you have. You get to go to fish school for the day when you're with a professional fisherman like that. You get to learn top to bottom from them. And I personally, when I go out and take a guide, I don't necessarily get a guide for, let's say, bass fishing, what I do the most, but I get guides for all different types of fishing. And it's a lesson for me. I'm there taking notes all day long and looking what they're doing.
Oh, exactly. And then you kind of get a pattern of what you want to run, what you learned, and what you have confidence in, and the tackle you have, and how you present it on your boat. And when you get confidence in your setups and you go out there and you got your go-to, what we call hot box, or we have our hot 3 flashers, plugs, and a couple of spoons, and we get them out in the water right away at 4 or 5 in the morning, and they take off with nice fish. I mean, that's just a confidence builder for any angler anywhere.
Can you touch on some of the other salmonoids and trouts that we'll see in the Great Lakes that you can catch on your boat, and kind of the time of year that you're usually looking for them out on the big lake?
Right. Yeah, and that's a good question. And what we do is we put our fleet of charter boats in the water in April, mid-April usually. The weather starts getting decent late April, all of May, and we target coho salmon, lake trout, and brown trout. Now this past year, we had just a big school of coho salmon here the whole month of May, and just targeted the cohos, and they're great to eat. They're delicious fish. They're not as big as the king salmon, but they're fun to catch, and you catch a lot of them, and they're really good on the grill. But spring is usually lake trout, brown trout, coho right after that, all of May, late April, all of May. Then June, it's kind of a variety month. I call it the variety month, where you catch everything. You're going to catch Lakers, steelhead, rainbow, king, coho. We call it the grand slam, when you catch all 5 species and brown trout thrown in there. So June is definitely a good variety month. July, you start getting more in the kings and steelhead. August, the same thing, your kings and steelhead. If the bite gets tough, we might go after lake trout here and there just to get some more fish in the cooler. But preferably we do the kings and the steelhead, the rainbow, July and August. And then, like we just touched on, September is the big king run when they come in the spawn. The males come in, then the females come in, and then the last fish to come in the spawn is the coho salmon. And all these fish, I mean, it's a put and take fishery. They live 3 to 4 years, so it's quick. They come in, they grow that big, that fast. You have a shot at a 30-pound plus king salmon, and they only live 3 to 4 years. So, I mean, they grow quick with all these bait fish in this lake.
You are out of Sheboygan, Wisconsin. Wisconsin is where I do most of my salmon fishing. I do some salmon and trout fishing in Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan as well. Wisconsin definitely is where I go the most, because I have the best luck there. I'll be completely honest. And we were talking off camera a little bit about some of the numbers that Wisconsin's doing these days. And I think we're going to get into this more when I see you in person. But real quick, shoot out some of those numbers you were telling me earlier.
Yeah, the numbers we've been increasing, the DNR of Wisconsin's been increasing salmon and trout here for we're going on the 7th year now. We haven't had an increase, until 7 years ago. We went to Madison. We talked to a lot of the DNR staff, the secretary of the DNR, and told them, these folks, what we're seeing in the lake with the large amount of bait fish and the natural reproduction is there, but we definitely need to stock the lake. And a lot of my customers they come into my store and they're like, when did they stop stocking the lake? I said, they never have. They've always stocked the lake every year. And that's what our license sales go for. But in the last 7 years, we've increased it. We're right now about 2.8 million trout and salmon combined stock per year in Wisconsin, and the king being number one at 1.3 million right now. So a lot of fish go into the lake every year on the Wisconsin side.
To anyone else that doesn't understand, although Wisconsin does have tons of shoreline, and I think that kind of goes into how some of the numbers and the money accumulates, but those numbers are much higher and can't even compare to any of the other Great Lakes states as of right now.
Right. And our fishery, I've seen it increase a lot in the last 7 years, just by what I just said with the increase that we had of these trout and salmon. We've increased rainbow trout, coho salmon, king salmon, reduced lake trout, and kept brown trout about the same, maybe a little less, just because we lost the German brown, but we do have the sea perel and brown trout, which is a better fish to stock, and economy wise, it's just more affordable, the sea perel and brown trout. But the kings, again, are number one. 7 years ago, they were planning 877,000 Chinook salmon per year in Wisconsin, and now we're at almost 1.4. We're 1.36. Almost doubled in the last 7 years, and it shows. The fishery is booming right now. We had a great year this year, a lot of big numbers of fish.
I look forward to those coho moving in after the kings. I think I'm a little more partial to them. Last year, I don't know about, I'd have to assume that trolling, you saw this, but I've never in my life seen the coho like they were last fall.
Yeah, it's been crazy. The coho have been just increasing. The size has been better. The action's been unbelievable. And even this last spring, there's days we went out and we'd have 40 plus fish on in a half day, 5-hour trip. We'd land probably half of them, because they're so aggressive. But you come in with 20, 25 coho in a trip, you had 40 fish on. It's just a beatdown. It's so much fun. And I do bring some TV shows here. We do film some shows in the spring for coho and king. And to watch us on Facebook, you'll see it on the videos too, and YouTube and whatnot. It's just action packed, a lot of fun for these coho salmon springtime. And then we go right into the king and the steelhead. So it just keeps getting better and better.
Well, Dan, listen, I'm glad we got to talk about the trolling a little bit. We've got to cover all the different kind of techniques that I like to catch the salmon and trout, and as everyone else should join, get used to. If you haven't fly fished, if you haven't trolled before, if you haven't skeined, bobber fish, there's all these different ways to catch these beautiful creatures. And obviously trolling with you would be also an awesome technique. So if anyone wants to check out your website or book with you, what should they go to? How should they find you?
Well, the best way for reservations and questions, or if you want to call me, just send some fishing advice. My number, you'll reach me personally, Dumper Dan, at 920-377-1147. And the number's on our website too at dumperdan.com. Our address here, 676 South Pier Drive on the River Sheboygan. But check out our Facebook page, and you can access that on our homepage of our website. And what I do every week is I do a fishing report every week, video, audio. So if you're bringing your own boat out, tune into us on Facebook, not just all our charter fishing pictures, but also my fishing report might get you on some fish as well. And that's Dumper Dan Sport Fishing Charters on Facebook.
Everyone, that's Dumper Dan. I hope you guys were able to fill the brains in with all that information. I know you guys got a lot here today. But Dan, thank you, and we'll catch you next time. Everyone, this week we are joined by my dear friend, Captain Louie Dazzo of Louie's Get Hooked Guide Service. Louie, thanks for joining us today.
Yes, sir.
So everyone, we are here, and you can see we got a whole table full of goodies here. And Louie, we're just going to work down, kind of talk about your favorite, my favorite baits, and truly not about favorites, but baits that work. You know,
absolutely.
Baits that catch coho, kings, and later in the year, you can although tactics change a little bit, maybe lighter line, you can still catch most of these baits, your browns and your steelhead on it, right?
Oh yeah.
Now, they did just introduce brookies again to Milwaukee, and those are going to be fun, but you're not going to use a lot of this stuff for them yet, but let's get into it, guys. So, salmon fishing was what really got me hooked on fishing. It really was. My parents had a place outside of Michigan City, Indiana, and we have Trail Creek over there. Salt Creek's not too far, too, and it was so majestic, truly. It's like National Geographic, watching not only out by the pier head where you start seeing the fish jump, you know?
Oh, yeah.
But then when they get into the creeks and you see that, like, the wave coming and that big school is just coming through. And anytime, it might be a couple fish or it could be like 20 or 30 fish. You know, it's truly remarkable.
Oh, yeah.
But let's start to how I started fishing. And that was on pier heads and, you know, in big canals and stuff like that. So the first thing, the Daredevil spoon, right? It's unbreakable. It's tested and it's proven. It catches pike, it catches bass, they catch everything. But the salmon is for sure one of the best things about it. I love the glow spoons too. I like, you know, natural colors like a shad, something like that. And then I got a Fire Tiger, something to get those fish going, because Fire Tiger is pretty much known as a great king bait, right?
Oh yeah, classic.
And then love the casting spoons. You know, I work them different. You know, I count them down, work higher in the water column and lower in the water column. Different speeds, but spoon, can't beat it, especially glow-in-the-dark spoon at night, one of my favorites. Then, if I'm not throwing a spoon, want to cover that deeper water column a little more or stay consistently in a strike zone, is definitely a crankbait. So I've thrown 3XDs, 6XDs from Strike King, stuff like that, but it kind of seems like a slender, more of a jerkbait style crank is better. And sometimes I just straight reel it, and other times I work it like a jerkbait, you know. But definitely, I've caught more fish on a spoon and a plug like this than anything else. But there's tons of other tactics, and you're on the water all the time.
Oh yeah.
You're guiding for these fish, and you're fishing for them for fun. So what are some of your top baits here?
Man, we have to start off with a spoon. Early season, when these kings are staged up in the gap of the harbors, you know, they're still out deep, 20 to 30 feet of water, and a lot of these fish are suspended or real tight to bottom.
Okay.
A jig and spoon is excellent for that. Chartreuse in particular, this color right here is phenomenal. The salmon just seem to key in on that darker green color. And just vertical jig this. You saw in my previous video, I was just casting it and just kind of snap jigging it back works also. Utilizing live scope has been huge for me, and I know a lot of other guys seeing where the fish are positioned, at what depth they're at. And this, when they're deeper and they're more aggressive, a spoon is very hard to beat.
And you're, like you said, that's a little different than the spoon as I was talking about.
Yes.
Heavier, definitely more dense. And worked more as a vertical presentation.
Exactly.
What else you got there?
Okay, so moving back, so when the fish start pushing up a little bit more or they're feeding up a little bit higher, preferably at night, I like a Flikr shad. And it's really important, guys, if you're going to use a Flikr shad, change out these treble hooks. They're really, the hooks that it comes with are very soft and they bend out and break really easily. If you hook a 20-pound king and it's making a scream and run, they will snap this hook. So make sure you change out the treble hooks. Very important with these Flikr shads. But this color, again, guys, chartreuse green is dangerous for king salmon, especially when you got a little murk to the water, a little bit of tint. This is an unstoppable bait. And
I will say real quick, I agree on the old hooks, but Berkley now has fusion hooks on their new Flikr shads.
That's what you were telling me.
Yeah. And rumor has it you don't have to change those hooks. I hear those things are
less work for us.
Exactly.
Love it.
All right, we got another type of crankbait here.
Yep, so we got the old KVD Strike King. This is a classic, guys. If you're going to use Strike Kings, make sure you get, it's got that kind of holographic scale pattern, and it just seems to put more glimmer in the water. And again, you can see all these so far have been that chartreuse green, guys. This is really good. Higher up in the water column, I like this when the fish are more in the harbors. They're not so much out in that deeper gap area of the harbors, but they're inside the marinas more so in that 10 to 12 foot range. Not to mention big browns. They like to smoke these also. But dangerous bait, also very good in low light conditions.
Awesome. So that kind of covers the big water, right? But a bait you could still throw in the big water, but maybe gets lost a little bit because it's a finesse style bait. Is I see your little inline spinner, which I've been using for steelhead particularly for years in the creeks.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is a little classic, guys. This is a Blue Fox Gold, and it's just straight gold. It's a size 3. And I like to fish this on just 10-pound tests. You can even fish this in the creeks, but This can be a really good bait when fish are a little more lethargic and not willing to chase down a bigger bait, a bigger presentation. That slow vibration and flash coming across their heads, I mean, they will smoke this thing in most situations, especially in shallower water. This thing is really, really good.
And especially that clean gold or nickel look.
Yep.
You can throw it in super clear water or stained water.
Exactly.
And like you said, it's a good finesse bait. It's a little smaller, but also you can work this, again, at any speed, really.
Exactly. And really important, I like to run this on braid to a fluorocarbon leader. 10 or 12 pound fluorocarbon leader gives it the most precise action out of that lure.
What you got in this little box here?
So this is the Gapin's jig. The cool thing about this is you can pretty much work this in any situation. You can work this thing deep. There's different sizes. You can work this thing shallow. You can even work this thing in the creeks. You notice the pattern again. Chartreuse is good. White. Pink is also good when you got the coho and the steelhead. They like that pink color. This can just be vertically jigged. You can even cast this out, let it fall, and just a slow retrieve. It's got a little tinsel in it. It's got some marabou. Drives the fish wild. I've caught a lot of trout in particular with this, but you'll also rail some big coho and kings on this as well.
Awesome. Now, you're out fishing all the time, so you're fortunate enough to get fresh skein salmon eggs, if you will.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about what you do with that in a second.
Yes.
But because I'm in the studio a lot and I'm traveling a lot, I don't always get the opportunity to have fresh skein. Sure. And I don't have a cooler because you got to keep that stuff cold in a fridge or something. Yep. So for years, I've tried the alternatives, right? And it's definitely maybe not as good. Some days it seems like it almost doesn't matter. It really doesn't.
Yep.
But I like the fresh stuff if I can have it. But guys, here I have like plastic eggs, right? So I got some orange and some pink stuff, and these come together. I'll open these guys up real quick. See, it's like a string of them. So you can either fish them on a super small hook under a bobber or on a little weight with just like one or two. Or I've also seen keeping them together, right? Like a little strain of eggs that fell out of a female. And it'll just be in that current kind of going back and forth, and that salmon will just come up and grab it.
Oh, yeah.
I talked earlier about how in the show that you can use yarn even. In Alaska, they use that a lot.
Yep.
And then the other thing, these are really cool, guys. I like these a little more than the plastic, actually, because they last forever as long as you don't break off. And that's physically a bead. So all this is a little bead painted a color. So they have orange, red, purple, pink, all the different kind of colors of eggs, all the different
Steelies
stains.
love those too.
Oh, the trout especially.
Oh, yeah.
The trout, something about these.
Oh, yeah.
But you literally just put these on the line, and then there's pegs, okay? So you see how the peg tapers? You put the small side in the hole, so there's a hole that your line runs through these beads. You put that point in, and you pull it, and that's gonna secure your bead on the line, and it's not gonna move. So what I do is like a split shot on my line, then I'll do a couple of these beads spaced out, and at the end, I'll just put a bait hook, right? And they'll just munch them and try to eat them all, and get that hook at the end. And again, it's a challenging, different way of catching fish.
For sure.
But talking about the real stuff, what kind of gear do you got for that here?
Okay, cool. So when it comes to the skein and egg fishing, guys, it's really important. I mean, slip bobber fishing is probably your most consistent. I like to use a Thill. This is a fairly sized slip bobber. Obviously, you want your stoppers. Really important, guys, with terminal tackle, I like to use the smallest barrel swivels I can get away with. And the reason for that is salmon and trout have excellent eyesight. They will analyze your whole presentation of rig sometimes before they even eat it. They'll look at your rig, your swivel. If it's too flashy and too bulky, they're going to shy away. They're not going to want to eat it. This is size 6. That's kind of a standard for steelhead and salmon in terms of barrel swivel. For mainline, guys, I like J-Braid or Power Pro. 15 pound or 20 pound is good. You want the softness. You don't want to go too heavy because it kind of kills the presentation. So J-Braid, 15, 20 pound, or Power Pro is kind of the standard on that. As far as the leader go, guys, fluorocarbon is probably your most beneficial for that. Trout, I like 6 to 8 pound test. Salmon, 12 to 15 pound test. Depending on water clarity, you can always switch up on that quite a bit. Hooks, really important, guys. I like Gamakatsu. Gamakatsu's great, and as you know, they bend. When you hook these fish, and they're going. When you first hook them, I mean, they're gone. If you're using a light wire hook, you know.
There's nothing. If you guys have not got out and caught a Great Lake trout, I don't mean like a driftless trout or an inland trout. I'm talking about these fish that are 24 to 40 inches, these salmon and trout, and they bite, and they go,
yeah.
I mean, it is that noise, you know, and I'm sorry if I blast your guys' eardrums out, but that is literally like
30 to 50 yards sometimes.
It's euphoric.
Yeah.
That sound gets me going so hard. And I'm obsessed. And that's what that's what made me love salmon fishing,
right.
you know?
It is a very addictive fish to catch. And that's why the Gamakatsu size 1 or 2 guys use a strong wired hook, because they will bend out a lot of hooks. If you're not using a strong hook, you're going to lose fish, like Jim just said. I mean, it's crazy. So
there's other manufacturers, of course, that make great hooks. So just make sure it's not an ultra thin wire hook, and make sure it's got a little bones to it, because again, these aren't panfish, these aren't bass. They have meat to them,
big boys,
and they are full of muscle.
Yeah.
Now, Louie, we just covered a lot, right? Yeah. That's a lot for everyone to take in, guys. So watch it over again, listen to us over again so you get this, because you can make really just a great Lake Michigan box off of what we talked about here. And you don't need everything, right?
No.
Find what your strong suits are, find what you're comfortable with, and go with that.
Yeah.
Now, all that being said, all these baits are great, and you can have 10 to 20 fish days on some of this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But let's be honest. It seems like there is one thing out there that is salmon crack. And that is skein. That is the fresh eggs right out the belly.
Yep.
So we're gonna go outside, and Louie, you mind showing us how we handle that stuff? How we do that?
Let's do it. Today we are going to show you guys how to cure salmon eggs for the fall salmon run. Really cool stuff here, guys. This is a really high demand thing this time of year. A lot of people want to catch salmon. I'm going to give you the process, the whole rundown, and show you guys how you can do it yourselves at home. So a couple essential tools, guys. First of all, you can see I'm wearing some gloves. You're gonna want some thin latex gloves like this. This stuff right here will dye. It stains, it smells, it's sticky. You're gonna want gloves. Scissors, critical component, and you're definitely gonna want some paper towel. And then of course, you're gonna want your cures. So as you can see here, I have Patskis, guys. This is my favorite cure to use. It's got a lot of scent. It's a krill plankton-based scent. It absorbs into the eggs really well. And if you guys don't know, salmon and trout have an excellent sense of smell. So you want to put cures on your skein to not only dye the color of it, but add a lot of scent to it as well. So Patskis is good. Another alternative, if you can't get the Patskis, is Atlas. They make a good one as well. And there's different colors you can use, guys. I like red. Red's been really good for me, especially in clear water. Orange is good when you have a little more dingier water, or it's a fresher run of fish where the eggs are still a bit more orange. But right now, red has been the hot stuff. Little secret for you guys. So, all right, I'm gonna run into it, guys, show you guys how to do this. Make sure you got your gloves on. Here we go. So when you get your loaf of skein, basically, guys, what this is you catch a female salmon where the eggs are still intact. We call it a membrane. There's 2 loaves per salmon in one female salmon. So this is just one of the 2 loaves. And you can see here, it's still pretty tight. It's not, they're not individual eggs. They're still pretty tight. They're in a membrane. First thing you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna spread this apart. So you're gonna wanna use your fingers because they tear really easily and kind of go like this. I'm trying to spread this open essentially. So I'm just kind of lightly running my fingers through this like this. And the reason you want to spread it, guys, is because when you go to put your seasoning on, you want to make sure it gets all the nicks and crannies inside of this skein. You want to make sure you hit everything. So that's really important. You don't want to go too much, just enough to where you can get everything. So you're kind of massaging the eggs, opening it up. Okay, another important step, guys, after you open it up like this, it's more flattened out and opened, you want to get some paper towels. So when you get some paper towels, like I said, you want to have a lot of paper towels. You want to get all the blood, all the residual blood out of these eggs. So I'm going to grab a little clump like this, open it up, and I'm going to pat this just to kind of absorb any leftover blood, because what the blood does, guys, it'll totally mess up the process of your curing. So you don't want any blood in here. All right, guys, so once you're done patting off the residual blood off your loaves, it's good to have a pair of scissors. And what this is for, basically, if you have any like membrane blood, you get like strips, cut that off. So like I had one here, I cut that off, tossed it out. Basically, guys, zero blood. It'll really hurt your process here. So, okay, basically, so we've spread it apart, guys. We've removed the blood. We've patted it down with paper towel. The next thing you're gonna want is your cure. You can buy this stuff for 10, 12 bucks. I buy it in R&R in Milwaukee. Patskis, this is my preferred method. I've caught lots and lots of big salmon off of this specific cure right here. So you're gonna grab your cure, open this up. Again, guys, this stuff stains. You wanna do it outside, make sure you have your gloves on because it'll get you. Basically what you're gonna do is you're gonna hold the skein up like this. And you wanna hit this in it's almost like marinating a steak, seasoning a steak. You wanna get every nook and cranny of this skein right here. So
I'm gonna start in the front here. And actually, you know what I'm gonna do? Now, here's a quick tip for you guys. You can, now this is the fire cure. This is more of a preservative. This is more of an extra seasoning you can put on. So I'm actually gonna start with the preservative first. And it doesn't matter which order you guys do that in, this is just my personal preference. So the Fire Cure Boraxo, this is where I'm gonna start with here. It's a little more fine powder. This is a little bit thicker. I'm spreading it open to make sure I hit those inside parts. You don't wanna see any orange left. You want this all to be red by the time you're done. That looks good. You see how it's got that nice crystal red kind of glimmer to it? That's what you want on top. Salmon candy, guys. It's got that nice glossy red coloration right there. Salmon also have very good eyesight, very good sense of smell, very good eyesight. So you have the smell with the cure, and then you have the visibility with the red. After you're done with that, guys, what you're gonna do is you're gonna grab a Ziploc baggie. I prefer the gallon size like this. It doesn't hurt to date it when you cured it. So if you were to freeze it, you can save this and you can recall when you did it. But I'm gonna put this into a Ziploc baggie. From there, you're gonna put it in the refrigerator for 2 days, 2 to 3 days. And what's gonna happen now is all of this cure is gonna absorb into this egg, and what was in the egg prior is going to leach out of the egg. So they're gonna switch places. So this scent is gonna get into the egg, it's gonna dye it, turn it into that nice red color, and it's gonna go through a kind of a metamorphosis process. So that's the deal. Let it soak for about 2 to 3 days in the refrigerator, not the freezer. You're gonna take the eggs out, put it back onto paper towels, and then you're gonna put it back in the refrigerator again to air dry for a day. That's pretty much it, guys. Thank you for watching. I'm Captain Louie Dazzo with Louie's Get Hooked Guide Service and Midwest Outdoors. Hope you guys learned something. Thank you.
Midwest Outdoors Magazine helps you enjoy the outdoors, giving you the best information on where to go, what to use, and how to use it. With fishing maps marked by the pros, nature notes, in-depth interviews, and much, much more. Your subscription gets you 10 big issues of the best in fishing, hunting, and the great outdoors. Plus, Midwest Outdoors Digital Edition gives you dozens of extra articles. Sign up now at mwomag.com. That's mwomag.com.
I want to thank Dumper Dan and Louie Dazzo for joining us this week. They had so much insight on catching these elusive and beautiful salmon and trout that roam our Great Lakes. I hope you guys got a lot from today, and I hope some of you guys are just realizing that we have edible salmon and trout in the Great Lakes. And if you didn't know, they didn't necessarily originate here. We put them in. Same place, same time, 2 weeks from now, guys. Episode 3 will be on its way and dropped to you guys. So I hope you enjoyed it. As always, like, subscribe, share, do it all. Check out the TV show, subscribe to the magazine. If you haven't yet, like Midwest Outdoors TV on YouTube and Midwest Outdoors USA on Facebook and Instagram. Drop us a message, what you guys thought of the show or what you want to see in the future. Guys, I'm Jim O'Neill, and that's this week's Midwest Outdoors Podcast. Tight lines.